Oli, for people who are reading about this report, can you just give us a 1-2 about who you are in Action for Sustainable Development, and then we'll talk about this report.
Hi, yeah, it's great to be here. So I'm Oli Henman. I'm the coordinator of Action for Sustainable Development. We're a global network that brings together more than 3,000 different civil society organizations around the world who are committed to deliver on sustainable development. 80% of our membership is in the global south, so it's really primarily community-based organizations working around the world, and many of them are involved in their own national coalitions, advocacy, campaigning, joint mobilizing in countries all over the world.
It sounds like a pretty good audience for this report in some ways. Tell us, why did you get involved in this report, and what was the purpose of doing this?
Well, we've been collaborating with Canadian colleagues like yourself for a number of years, and I think it's really important that we understand a bit more about the dynamics of how different national coalitions work. Many of our members, as I say, are either themselves directly involved or partnering with national coalitions all around the world. And it really feels like at this time, when the world is facing so many challenges, as civil society, we really need to work together. And national coalitions like those that we've looked at in this report and that you've highlighted through the report can provide a really strong infrastructure to bring together those voices and be a strong, united voice in terms of advocacy, campaigning, and really pushing for change, the change that we need to see in the coming months and years.
So tell me, for somebody who is in one of these coalitions or maybe even in government, like, what is this research a to-do template? Like, just do it this way, or is this a best practices? Is this a scan? Is this just research because we're still underway in making coalitions? What's the status of this in terms of somebody who's getting involved in coalitions? Because many of them are just getting started.
It's a really mixed picture. I mean, I think what's interesting is that there are some coalitions out there that are already very strongly established. I mean, you look at the examples in India or in Kenya, where you actually have very, very clearly defined and very broad-based coalitions that have been very strongly able to bring together a diverse range of voices to shape policy with government, and often to engage very closely with government and provide an entry point for many different voices into SDG planning processes. But you're right, I mean, that's not the case everywhere. And there are many countries where that notion of actually bringing people together is still something that's being worked through, as you say. And I think one of the strengths of this report is that it highlights different approaches that have worked in different places. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all, and I think, you know, it will depend a lot on the national context. What are some of the underlying conditions? What are some of the strong networks that already exist within particular countries? But what's interesting with this report is it gives you some ideas, gives you some tips, gives you some good practices that have worked well in other places that can help people in their own planning as they look forward in the coming months.
So did you learn anything, Oli? I mean, you're pretty well versed with all these coalitions and so on. Is there anything in that research that sparked your interest?
I think what is interesting is I've been reading a book that some people know called New Power. And I think one of the things that's interesting in the way that the coalitions are structured is there's a kind of gradual shift away from, let's say, a very top-down, very kind of orchestrated approach towards a much more decentralized, non-hierarchical, kind of horizontal way of organizing. And I think that's a really interesting shift that's happening within our own sector. And I think that's something that's going to accelerate further. And technology actually further allows that to happen so that many more voices can be heard within these processes. And I think that's the exciting part for me, is how do we get better at genuinely hearing those different voices at a community level and enabling them to also shape, you know, regional policies or even global policies at the UN level. And I think as we get more and more used to using this technology, to hearing different voices, I think that opportunity will just grow. And I really want to see us, and working with you and with others, really strengthening those community voices and giving them more of a space.